If you've been on Twitter for the past 4 months, chances are you've seen quite a few tweets with these 3 words. Buy Metroid Dread. This might be confusing to those who aren't diehard fans of Metroid, and even new fans are probably scratching their heads as to why this is. After all, we don't see this kind of support leading up to a new Mario or Zelda game, so what makes Metroid Dread so special? And why should you buy Metroid Dread? Well, simply put, Metroid does not get new games nearly as often as Nintendo's other IPs. The last game in the series, Metroid Samus Returns, came out 4 years ago, and this was a remake of Metroid 2. The last original mainline Metroid game, Other M, was released 11 years ago. This is not the first time Metroid has seen a drought this extensive either, as the gap between Super Metroid and Metroid Prime with Fusion was 8 years. During these droughts, fans have been holding their breath hoping that Nintendo hadn't abandoned Metroid and that they would soon see Samus again one day. These droughts have occurred because Metroid, despite being one of Nintendo's oldest, most critically revered series, and essentially creating an entire genre itself, has not translated well into sales. According to an article by Verdict, the combined sales of every Metroid game totals to 17.2 million, which might sound like a lot, until you compare it to Nintendo's other 35-year-old franchise. Breath of the Wild alone has outsold the entire Metroid series. Most of the Metroid games are critically acclaimed, with Metroid Prime even in Metacritic's top 20 ranked games. So why don't the sales numbers reflect this? There are a number of reasons, one of which is timing. Super Metroid, for example, came out at the tail end of the Super NES's life in Japan, just months before the launch of the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Plus, it had to compete against Nintendo's own Donkey Kong Country, and when you challenge the monkey, you lose that battle 9 times out of 10. Metroid Prime was released in November 2002, not having to compete with many games on Nintendo's year-old GameCube, making it the best-selling game in the series. And unfortunately, it was all downhill from there, as the sequels only performed half as well. Metroid Prime 2's low sales might have been related to GameCube's lack of popularity, but Metroid Prime 3 and Other M released on the hugely successful Wii, and those games only sold 1.5 million copies. After the release of Metroid Other M, the series would not see a new game until 6 years later, with Metroid Prime Federation Force. This was a 3DS spin-off where the focus was 4-player co-op, so it wasn't what fans wanted at the time. To think after waiting 6 years for a new game, we get Blast Ball. Amazing. However, Metroid Samus Returns came out a year later, alongside the reveal of Metroid Prime 4. Needless to say, fans were having a pretty good year. Unfortunately, many of them were disappointed that Samus Returns was released on the Nintendo 3DS and not the Switch, so the sales were not impressive. One can only imagine how frustrating this is for Metroid fans to see. Here is a series that breaks all kinds of ground, inventing a genre, revolutionizing game design, and creating an unforgettable atmosphere that makes it stand out amongst the other Nintendo properties. There really is no other game series like Metroid, and it is downright criminal that it's not even half as successful as Mario or Zelda. Just knowing that there are millions of gamers around the world who haven't touched a Metroid game is kind of heartbreaking. They have yet to feel the wonders of landing on the rainy plains of Crateria, hearing the music of Torvis Bog, and witnessing the horror of Neo Ridley. Metroid is filled with over 35 years of timeless moments, and so many people have yet to see them. During the great Metroid Drought of the 2010s, the future of Samus remained uncertain. Eventually, in 2017, it ended with the reveals of Samus Returns and Metroid Prime 4, but hopes of playing the latter soon were dashed 1.5 years later, when development on the game restarted completely, causing 2.5 years of Metroid radio silence until the announcement of Dread in 2021. Not only is it the first original 2D Metroid in 19 years, it's also a long-rumored game thought to have been cancelled over a decade ago. Now, Metroid fans are happy, but still concerned. If Dread and even Prime 4 don't sell well, this could mean another Metroid Drought. One that could be permanent. This is why the fan outcry of Metroid Dread support is so massive. Fans are done with the low sales numbers of Metroid. They are done with the years of droughts. They are done with Metroid not getting the credit it deserves. They want people to know that Metroid Dread is coming. It's probably going to be great, and if it is, then you should buy it if you have any interest. Money talks, and Nintendo listens, and it's the only way to ensure more Metroids will come. And luckily, Metroid Dread already seems to be on track to succeed. It's the #1 pre-ordered Switch title at GameStop, it was the #1 game pre-ordered on Amazon for a while, and heck, Samus Returns was #1 on the 3DS eShop after Dread got announced. This also goes for the Virtual Console Metroid games on Wii U. The proof is in the pudding. People want Metroid, and we might just be on the verge of a Metroid renaissance, a Metroid Dread-assance. It's interesting to see this surge in demand for Metroid because where did it come from? Part of it has to do with gaming being a bigger medium than ever before, with more people buying games and consoles. What also helps is the increased popularity of the Metroidvania genre. Back in the 2000s, there weren't many Metroidvania games except Metroid and Castlevania. Then came the 2010s, where many indie developers brought the genre back into the spotlight, with games like Guacamelee, Ori, Hollow Knight, Bloodstained, Axiom Verge, and many more. All of these great Metroidvanias were released, and the most Metroid got was a remake on the 3DS. Metroid Dread is the series' new chance to shine alongside these great games. After all, without Metroid, they wouldn't even exist. It also helps that Metroidvanias seem to be very popular on the Nintendo Switch. This brings us to the next important factor in Dread's success, the Switch effect. Nintendo's IPs have seen massive sales by just being on the immensely popular Nintendo Switch. The best-selling Zelda, 3D Mario, Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem, and Xenoblade. What do they all have in common? They're on the Switch. If this pattern repeats itself, Metroid Dread should surpass Metroid Prime's 2.8 million copies sold in just under a year. Both of these factors are most likely the reason why so many people are willing to buy Metroid Dread. They want to support the series that inspired their favorite games like Ori and Hollow Knight. Better yet, by supporting Metroid Dread, you're inadvertently supporting other abandoned Nintendo IPs. Games like F-Zero, Star Fox, Pikmin, Golden Sun, Kid Icarus, Mother 3, you name it. Except Stunt Race FX, that's never coming back. Sorry, Andre. Nintendo isn't just giving Metroid a chance on Switch, but every one of these IPs as well. Heck, this also applies to Advance Wars Reboot Camp in December, a franchise that hasn't gotten a new game since 2008. Nintendo is testing the waters here, seeing how well their older IPs sell on their successful hardware, the Switch. So if you're wondering whether or not to buy Metroid Dread, consider what that purchase would mean. You would be supporting the game series that invented a genre, a series that has historically seen low sales for decades and suffered as a result, even twice missing an entire generation of platforms, unless you count Metroid Blast from Nintendo Land, which you should, because it's amazing. And you'd also be telling Nintendo that you want to see more of their less popular IPs return to the mainstream. Of course, you may want to wait until reviews first, just to confirm it ends up as great as it looks to be so far, but if it does, and you're interested and financially able to, you should buy Metroid Dread. Or I'll buy it for you. With all that said and done, are you going to buy Metroid Dread? Let us know in the comments below, and check out the videos on the right for more topics you might be interested in. Until next time, bye. Metroid Dread.